A Dry White Season is an interesting landmark of a film. It was the first Hollywood studio film to be directed by a black woman. As a result, she also became the only woman to direct Marlon Brando in a film, and it was the last Oscar nomination that Brando would ever receive. I've been meaning to see this for quite a long time, and I'm glad I finally got my chance. The film is a very harsh look at South Africa during the time of apartheid. We see the black population fight for better treatment and equal rights, only to be met with brute force and ugly racism in response. But the movie also focuses on one man's awakening to this inequality and his eventual fight to bring justice back into the law. Benjamin du Toit is a well-to-do man born and raised in South Africa. When the son of his longtime gardener is taken into custody, du Toit is drawn into the issues that he's never needed to care about before. The gardener goes missing soon after, and du Toit realizes just how corrupt and violent the system really is. Thus begins du Toit's struggles, which really start when white society turns on him and calls him a traitor for asking too many questions. Now, I won't pretend like Hollywood doesn't tell non-white stories from the white person's point of view, and I can understand in some cases that it's really insensitive, but in this case it does work. The theme of the story is a man coming out of comfortable complacency to defy an oppressive state when he doesn't need to. He could just listen to his wife and turn a blind eye like the rest of them, but instead he decides to keep his integrity and be a role model for his son, no matter what the cost. And nearly 10 years after he played one of the most iconic fathers in film history, Donald Sutherland was the right choice to play this man. Actually, Ben du Toit and Calvin Jarrett are both affluent father figures who are forced to acknowledge problems that they were able to ignore in the past. But while problems faced by Calvin are internal, the problems that Ben faces are external, and so it leads to moments where the previously privileged man is branded the lowest of the low. Donald Sutherland does a great job portraying this man as well as his character arc. Aside from Sutherland, there's a few other standout performances. Zacchaeus Moquet does a great job as Stanley, the man who's forced to watch his loved ones disappear one by one with very little hope of helping them. Jürgen Prochnow is convincingly unlikable as the officer in Special Forces. Janet Sussman gives a decent performance as Ben's wife, and Susan Sarandon has a small role as a journalist trying to put the accounts of murder and torture into the paper where they can be read about. But of course, I would be most remiss if I didn't talk about Marlon Brando's appearance in the film. Marlon Brando's performance as Ian McKenzie is not his best one, but I think it still retains a good part of what made Brando the best actor of his day. He takes the cliched idea of the cynical lawyer and plays around with it. And say what you will about Brando, but he was dedicated to this movie's cause. After years of demanding millions of dollars for little more than cameo work in movies like Superman, Brando filmed his supporting role in this film for the minimum union scale rate of $4,000. Ultimately, it was writer-director Eugene Palcy's passion which persuaded him to make such a decision, and it's that same passion which made this film get made. Palcy went to South Africa herself and researched the history of apartheid even while the fight was still going on. At the end of the film, there's a tribute in honor of the thousands who fight to change things for the better. The film was made in 1989 when Nelson Mandela was still in prison, and the issues were continuing to beget violence and hatred. There are many who will fiercely debate about the conditions of South Africa as they are now, compared to what they were in the past, but for what it's worth, it's important that movies like this were made to show the dangers of a racist state which has the power to act on its racism with impunity.